You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Episode 109 of the podcast. Welcome to it. We are the fellas, Cody, Abrams, and Melbourne, joining you for this one. Guys, how we doing? Christmas in a couple of weeks.
Well, I actually already had my Christmas this Saturday to completely de-roll that or whatever. But yeah, we had our Christmas on Saturday, just kind of as like getting it out of the way before I leave for Sweden. So that was a lot of fun. It was also my mom's birthday, so that's why I was back in town. But now I'm here in Collingwood, pretty much just biding my time until I leave Saturday.
Very nice, very nice. I'm leaving Friday from Toronto to go back to Brockville for the holidays, so I'm looking forward to that. Case, I actually wanted to ask you. I don't think I've asked you this. Are you going to do the podcast in Sweden, or are we going to be without you for a few weeks?
No, I don't have any equipment, and I'm 6 hours ahead.
Oh yeah, true. Okay, so that for the listeners, then this is the first time I'm putting the pieces together, but it makes sense. It'll just be Harper and I after, I guess, for the next episode then, right? Like for what, 3 weeks then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess so.
Well, that's that's a big loss. We got to put you on the IR. Maybe we'll be able to pick someone up and use that cap space for a third spot there. But but no, that's unfortunate. But don't feel bad for you, dude. You're gonna have a great time in Sweden, and I'm looking forward to coming home too. So the boys are ready for just a great holiday season, and I can't wait. I've got one more exam. It's due tomorrow at 3:30, and then I am just cruising. I'm gonna play a shit ton of video games over the break, and I'm just gonna hang out, refresh my mind, body, and everything. So I just can't wait.
Terrific. Case, we'll take a look at the salary cap situation and, see who we can get in there to replace you. But, doing good, boys. Looking forward to the holidays. This is my last week of work at the station, and then I'm off all of next week. So looking forward to that. I'm going to be moving back home for the holidays and just looking forward to all the stuff that comes with it. So
moving back home, going 2 streets down.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm making it sound like I'm, like Chad coming from Toronto to Brockville or moving far away. Yeah, literally a couple blocks over. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it all for sure. So, all right. So for this episode, of course, we'll start with a little fantasy corner, just a recap of last week, and then to set up week 10 in the Boys in the Booth Fantasy Hockey League. Then a little cap or no cap. We've got one thing for that, and then Canada announcing their World Junior hockey team for the upcoming tournament that starts Boxing Day in Edmonton and Red Deer this year. So we will get into a conversation about the roster to wrap up the podcast. So first with a little fantasy corner, and Casey, a big win for you as expected over me, and obviously I'm rounding up here, but 255 to 146. So you beat
maybe the biggest
good
understatement ever on the podcast. A big win. It was a freaking catastrophic win. It was an absolute dummying, destroying, awesome win. Over 100 points. That's what I wanted.
Harp, that's tough.
That's tough, but
I will say, offense.
I put up like the second best points in the league. I think LVB is the only guy that beat me, or maybe someone else did too. But like, I put up a lot of points, but also Harp's got to get a little more than 150 to beat me.
Yeah, that's tough, Harp. Myself had a tough week. I did squeak out the win over Cameron in the Arizona Blackhawks. I guess I shouldn't say it was a tough week, because like if you look at the score, it did end up 216 to 156. So I did get a handful of points over him here, and it was a pretty commanding victory by the end of it. However, throughout the week, there were like at least 4 days where I was chasing the game, and I was chasing it all week. I was down to Cameron, and then what happened was he has Nazem Kadri, and he went down on the final day. So Cameron ended up producing a lot lower than his projections, and so did I. I don't know like what was happening. I just didn't have a lot of games, and Cameron was projected to have a good week. And then by the end of it, after it all shook out, I ended up coming out with the W, and that puts me to 8-1-0 for still first place in the league. So I'm cruising there. But what I did want to mention too was that Cory actually got his first win of the week, and we post on Instagram every week now on Mondays, and we say, hey, what do you want us to talk about on the podcast? If there's anything good, we'll bring it up. Well, Cory responded to this and he said, fuck everything else, you have to talk about the fact that I got my first fantasy win. So I'm acknowledging that right now. Cory's been setting his lineups, and he had a good week last week. He got the dub, and he is pumped.
Yeah. Sure is. He actually messaged me as well because I sent him Jake Bean's overtime winner for the Blue Jackets the other night, and just said, better be on the podcast. And he basically gave me two choices. It's like either that or me getting my first dub in fantasy. And he did. So congrats, Cory. Glad you're finally setting your lineups 9-10 weeks in.
Christ. And for this week, I wanted to mention too, because I'm playing the second place team in the league right now, which is the Meatheads, and that's Luke Sheridan, and he's got a pretty good team. But this week, like for whatever reason, he has hardly any games played, and I have a ton, except for the fact that I'm missing a handful of guys because of Calgary having their games postponed this week. So I'm missing Kubalik tonight, who I just picked up. Marner's already on the IR. Neil Pionk is on the IR for that hit against Rasmus Sandin. And then later in the week, like I'm missing another couple guys for games against Calgary. And so it's not good. I am still projected to win this week, but I think it's going to be another close one where, I might be chasing it for a bit, or it might come down to the wire. So those are fun. I'm looking forward to it. But at the same time, I want to keep my spot in first place. So Luke, I'm not allowing you to win this week. I'll say that.
I hate that I have more points than Luke, like total points, and he's 7-2. It's like, come on.
Yeah, it's all about the matchup. Like it's brutal. You can put up 300 points, and then anytime you do, someone will put up 310 who you're playing against. It's all about the matchup.
Yeah, that's for sure. Case, who have you got? Who are you up against this week?
I'm in fifth place right now, playing number 6, Taylor Prosser, Bacchus Door Bandits.
All right, and he's coming off a loss against Cory, so he's going to be motivated, Case.
We both have a decent amount of injuries going on, or COVID protocol as well, so it's going to be like a low-scoring event, I think. But so far, I have the projected points on them, 214 and 188.
Nice. Well, I'm going to be up against Horny Town OnlyFans. What a name that is! Against and that's Brandon Irving, and he's 3-6. I'm projected to win by about 10 points or so, and it should be a low-scoring affair. So that one is going to be interesting. So hopefully I can squeak one out against him, as Casey said after the catastrophic loss to him last week. So anyway, looking forward to week 10, Chad. But before we move on, let's get an update on the standings. So
I can't remember. Do we do top 5 or bottom 5 last week? I asked this every week now. Do you guys remember?
We did bottom 5 last week, I believe. And if we didn't, I apologize. So maybe 2 weeks in a row for the bottom 5.
All right. Well, top 5 this week then. Me in first, 8-1-0. I already mentioned that. I've got close to 300 total points, more than second. I'd have to do the quick math there, but I'm cruising, and I'm looking for someone to take me down. And as soon as someone does, maybe you'll get a shout out on the podcast. Second place, the Meatheads. That's who I'm playing this week. That's Luke Sheridan. Third place, with a name change actually that I forgot to mention last week, Will Nye the Science Guy. That's my buddy Remy, changed his name to Will Nye the Science Guy. Big William Nylander fan. Fourth place, the Danbury Thrashers. I still hate saying that name because it's wrong. Have my Danbury Trashers jersey coming in the mail on Wednesday, by the way, so I can't wait for that. And in fifth spot, Finally, I can mention Casey's name, or one of your guys' name here in the top 5. That's Bros Before Aho's great name, 5-4-0, and the total points are just rising. And if there's one team, honestly, and I'm not just trying to pump your tires, Case, if there's one team that I'm kind of worried about, it's you in 5th spot, creeping up on me. I know your total points have just been flowing the last few weeks, and it's got me checking over my shoulder. So I'm
feeling pretty good about the team, and that's why like everyone keeps asking me like, "Oh, let's do a trade. We should do a trade." I'm like, I don't. There's not a guy on my team that I feel like losing. Yeah, and that's a good place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, looking forward to Week 10 matchups for the Boys in the Booth Fantasy Hockey League. Okay, guys, let's get into cap or no cap. So just one for this.
You're now listening to Cap or No Cap right here on the Boys in the Booth podcast.
No cap, this shit bussin'.
The NHL players won't be going to the Beijing Olympics in February. Cap or no cap, Chad?
Ooh, I'll say cap. I think they still go. Yeah, I think they still go to the Olympics because they didn't go to the last one, and it sucked. And it sucked for everybody. It sucked for the players who wanted to play and represent their country. It sucked for the fans who wanted to see best on best. So I think in an ideal world, the players go, and there's already an agreement for them to go. And so as of right now, they are going unless something happens. Now, I understand why you asked this question, because it has come out in the last couple of days that there will be a mandatory 3 to 5 week quarantine for any player who contracts COVID-19 in China, and they will be subject to the Chinese administration, and they'll have to stay in China, and they'll miss NHL pay. I believe that's a stipulation as well. So and they'll have to be there for 3 to 5 weeks, even if they test negative in North America, but then upon arrival in China, they test positive. They won't be able to play at all, and they have to stay there for 3 to 5 weeks. And I know it's going to be an absolute nightmare, and people don't want that. So I understand the question. However, I think they still do go because it means so much. And I think we will see situations where people are quarantining, and it's not going to be great. But I think the cost of that is outweighed by the benefits of going, in my opinion. And I think the players still feel that way, even though I heard from an agent on behalf of the NHLPA saying that this was kind of worst case scenario, these quarantine rules. So it's a tough decision, but I think they still go, and I really hope they do go.
Well, I'm going to be short and sweet here because Chad stole all the thunder on this topic. So I'll just say cap with a asterisk. I'm going to say the NHL players are still allowed to go, but a lot of them are going to choose not to go.
That's a concern as well.
I agree with that.
That's definitely a concern. Like we saw Robin Lehner, I mean, for different reasons, but already opt out of playing in the Olympics. And that's not a nobody. Like that's their starting goaltender more than likely. So
Markstrom's pretty good.
Markstrom is pretty good, but Lehner is also very good. So one of their top two, anyways, is the point. But so we could definitely see that, which is too bad because the whole point of NHL players going is best on best. But I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. I hope they go. I really do.
Yeah, no, you want to see them go, and it's a big honor for these NHL guys, but it's just, COVID is not going away, and the quarantining and stuff, that's hard. Like, could you imagine being one of the players in this 3 to 5 week quarantine in China, and you're there and you're watching your team lose games, and you want to go back to North America to help them out? That is one point that I heard on another podcast I was listening to before we hopped on for this episode, and it's an excellent one, I think. And the other thing too is scheduling for the NHL, right? I mean, there is there is that factor as well, that they have this Olympic break in their schedule, and I know that is the last thing the NHL wants to do is alter the schedule at all if the players decide not to go. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But the Olympics are coming up fast, that's for sure.
They are, and I think. I wanted to say two things. I think first, like regarding the schedule, shouldn't the NHL like take out the All-Star break? Like if they're worried about, like not being able to fit enough postponed games, like isn't the All-Star break the first thing to go rather than pulling players out of the Olympics? Like that's what I think should happen and probably will happen. They just shouldn't have an All-Star break. Every Olympics prior, when the NHL is going, they just don't have an All-Star team or an All-Star break at all. So it kind of just makes sense to scrap it. And then second, the Omicron variant isn't going away. Like this is something that has made it into Canada. And I saw something today that in Ontario by December 31st, they expect the number of COVID cases to be upwards of 10,000 per day, meaning that some cities in Ontario with NHL teams, so this is Toronto and Ottawa, and then maybe throughout the rest of Canada too, if this spreads, could see their buildings like not be at full capacity. So it's not this isn't the case of China being stricter on this virus or something. It's the Omicron variant that really is kind of throwing this whole thing for a loop, and not only the Olympics but even the regular NHL here at home. So it's crazy, and hopefully things go well. All we can do is cross our fingers, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, this has crept its way into every single conversation I've had in my entire life in the last 2 years. So I'm going to either have to force us to move on here, or I'm going to be putting it on my contract next to Jack Eichel talk under I will not speak about fucking COVID and variants.
Fair enough.
I'm good with that.
Fair enough. All right, I'm good with that as well. Let's move on. So we'll talk about Team Canada now, and announcing their World Junior squad for the upcoming tournament in Red Deer and Edmonton that we're all looking forward to. It gets started on Boxing Day with Canada and the Czech Republic, and a couple of notable absentees on this roster. One in defenseman Brant Clarke, who was not invited to the selection camp, high first round pick of the Los Angeles Kings in the last draft, and Hendrix Lapierre, who started out the season with the Washington Capitals, scored in his first NHL game and then was eventually sent back to the queue. He does not end up making the team. Zach Dean is another name, late first round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights, who just signed his entry level deal, just to name a few. But Clarke and Lapierre, we'll start there. Thoughts on these guys not making the team? One not being invited to camp, and the other being one of the final cuts. Case, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll talk about Brant Clarke first, because frankly, I'm not as shocked that he's not on this team as some others are, from what I've heard so far. I am shocked he didn't get even invited, but not shocked he didn't make the team necessarily. The one thing really going for him that's hurting this team is that they now have no right-handed defenseman. So that's the one thing that's a little sketchy about this. But when you think about Brant Clarke, he's kind of one-dimensional at this point in his career, or his OHL career, I suppose we should say, in Slovakia. It's that he's all offense, and he doesn't really have a consistent defensive aspect to his game, and his skating isn't even that impressive at this level. So this guy can dish the puck around and has some unbelievable hands and a hard shot for his size, but you look at this team, and I think they're starting to realize that they might have to start taking an approach kind of like the men's Team Canada, where they need to add a few guys that can play some real defense and kind of throw the body around and get in lanes and whatever else is necessary here, because they have the scoring touch. You look at all the other guys on this team, they can all score, they can all pass. You look at some of the guys that got cut from this team. William Dufour has 24 assists and 20 goals in 26 games in the queue. Cut. You look at Evangelista, captain of London,
Nashville pick.
20 goals, 20 assists, and 21 games in the OHL. Cut. They realize that guys have to be dynamic hockey players to make this team. They have to be able to play all over the ice and have some other aspect. William Dufour, 6'3", 205 pounds, and all those points. Kind of surprised he got cut, but I'm not with Brant Clark because they need guys on the back end that can do it all.
I buy the argument, and I understand that you need some diversity on the back end. However, I will say that I find it kind of ludicrous that he wasn't even invited to camp to kind of show what he can do. And at the same time, too, like, I understand if a player is one-dimensional and you know, you see their games and you feel that they're one-dimensional, or you see their stats and you think they're one-dimensional. But I think there are two things going here. First, as I mentioned, like, he didn't even get invited, so he wasn't even able to prove in a training camp that he can defend the way that they want him to, if that's the case, if they need a defensive defenseman or whatever on the right side. So he didn't even get a chance to prove that. And second, like, this guy's played in Slovakia. He has some experience against bigger players, like men. So I just think that it's, you know, maybe you can make the argument that, okay, you need some better defensemen to fill a role, and like, that's fair. We know that you can't win with just all skill, but like, also with that being said, you know, Connor Bedard is on this team at 16, so there's an argument to be made there. But it's like, he's played against men, and he didn't even get a chance to prove that he could fill a role that they need. So not being invited, to me, is way more surprising than Hendrix Lapierre getting cut.
In terms of talking about Calder races and talking about the draft, you know that I weigh heavily on the fact that guys are playing against men over in Europe, but I don't think that's as significant as an argument in this situation, because if that were the case, then Finland and Sweden would be kicking our asses every single year because all of their team is playing against men. Same as Russia, same as Czech even, or Slovakia, but they're just playing at lesser leagues in Slovakia. So the playing against men thing, sure, it does give little strength to the argument about a defenseman, but I don't think it's necessarily as strong of an argument when it comes to the World Juniors. And I think it's just like, you look at some of the other defensemen on this team, and it's like, well, is Brant Clark even going to be on the power play on this team if you have Owen Powers quarterbacking, and if you have Cormier quarterbacking? Like, those guys are going to be the anchors, and they're going to be dishing the puck around at the top of the umbrella. So it's like, does Brant Clark play on the power play? If he's not playing on the power play, he's not going to be playing on the penalty kill, so he's going to be riding pine. And it's like, at that point, I'd rather have some, you know, bigger, stronger defensive-minded defenseman that's able to eat some minutes in those 5-on-5 areas or the penalty kill.
Fair enough.
It's it's a very good defensive core without Brant Clark. I mean, there's no question about it. You mentioned Owen Power. He's going to be expected to be a workhorse on the back end for this team. I think going into this tournament, it'll kind of remind me of what Thomas Chabot was for Team Canada a few years back, right, guys? I mean, we all remember how well he played. Caden Gooley, the Montreal Canadiens, and Carson Lambos, a nice mid-round pick in the last draft by the Minnesota Wild. Those are the three names that jump out to me. Cormier, as you mentioned, Case as well. I don't know him that well, but should be a nice defenseman for them as well.
Offensive weapon, smaller guy, like really small, but just offensive, like way more dynamic than all the other guys on the team. I don't know if it's more dynamic than Brant Clark, but I think he's got a little bit more to his game than Brant at this point. Like, Brant has way more potential. Like, if we're talking potential, who's going to be on this team? Clark is one of my first picks. Like, I think that guy is going to be such a great player in the league. But I do like this decor because it doesn't seem like we're going to have a situation like we did last year where Bowen Byram and Jamie Drysdale had to play like 400 minutes. And it's like, you only have that go-to pair like the whole tournament. It seems like it's going to be a little more spread this year, with Owen Power getting a lot of time and Gooley as well.
Yeah, for sure. Chad, let's get your thoughts on the three guys that are going to be behind the defense, the goaltenders, and obviously Sebastian Cossa of the Detroit Red Wings, their draft choice from the 2021 draft is the guy that stands out of the three. Your thoughts on the netminders selected for this team?
Yeah, well, I think Cossa or Cossa is probably the guy. You know, he was a high pick and you would expect him to start. I don't know, like I haven't looked at his numbers this year. I don't know if he has the best numbers or if he's like coming into the league as the best goalie. Can you tell me, Casey?
Yeah, he's played 2 more games in Grand, both in WHL. He's got .924 save percentage and Grand's got .932. That might be a team thing because Grand's goals against average is much better than Cossa's, but I mean, who's to say?
Yeah, I mean, like it always seems like in this tournament there's an older goalie who might be more established, and then there's a younger guy who was somewhat of a higher pick. And I think of like last year in Jesper Wallstedt for Team Sweden, and the guy ahead of him was Hugo Allenefelt. And Allenefelt was a late pick by, I want to say, Tampa Bay a few years ago.
Correct. Yes.
And we hadn't really heard much about him. Like, we knew he was drafted. We knew that he was Swedish and was going to play. And then he ended up starting over Wallstedt. And we were all kind of like, whoa, like, you know, what's going on here? So don't be surprised if it's a similar thing this year and Cossa doesn't get the start just because, you know, we're expecting it because he has that high ceiling, that high potential. He was such a high pick. But you would expect him to get games in. And if that happens, then I think that's a win for him, you know, regardless of how he plays. It's about the experience. It's about, you know, helping your team win. And I think if he gets, you know, some experience and if he'd be able to help that confidence, it'll be a good thing.
I think with these two guys, it's just ride the hot goalie. Like, give them each a game. Whoever looks better, that's who you go with until you need to make a change because they're both so good. And one of them has experience. So that he'll probably get the first game if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Cossa will be the guy, and we'll be watching him and Wallstedt for Sweden, right? We'll be watching those two guys because they were the two big goaltenders drafted in the first round in this past draft. And so the other two goalies, of course, for Canada at this tournament will be Brett Brochu of the London Knights. He is expected to be picked in the 2022 NHL draft, and Dylan Garand of the Kamloops Blazers as well, a New York Rangers draft choice. Let's go to the forward group now, guys. And Canada always has an exciting forward group, but this forward group is even more exciting this year, I feel like, because we are getting a look at the future, and that is starting with Shane Wright of the Kingston Frontenacs, who is the projected #1 overall pick for the 2022 NHL draft, and then moving on to 2023. Connor Bedard is the projected #1 pick, a 16-year-old on this team, as you mentioned, Chad. Let's start with those two guys and then the other players that you guys like in this forward group. So, Chad, let's go to you first.
Well, let's start with Connor Bedard, the 7th 16-year-old to ever make a World Junior squad. Let me just read the names that he's being mentioned alongside. Connor McDavid in 2014, Sidney Crosby in 2004. Ever heard of those guys? They're pretty good. Jason Spezza might be the best out of the three I've already mentioned. What a player he is on the Maple Leafs, and a dirty one at that with a 6-game suspension.
Oh, geez.
So he was in 2000. Jay Bouwmeester also in 2000. What a solid career Bouwmeester had. Eric Lindros, who was just nasty, like absolutely nasty coming into the NHL. And also, who could forget Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player to ever play the game in terms of his dominance and points. So to be amongst those names is ridiculous. And it was so funny. Like, I posted on Boys in the Booth the other day, Connor Bedard's response to being compared to those guys at a presser, and you can just already tell, like, when you watch the video, that he is just so annoyed by these comparisons because the kid is 16 years old. Like, he's in grade 10, for heaven's sakes. And someone said to him, you know, how do you feel being compared to guys like McDavid and Crosby? And he was like, well, I'm young and McDavid has 2 points per game in the show. I think it's a bit different. So I thought that was cool. Like, you see a little bit of personality coming out of the kids. So what an honor to make this team. And we'll see how much he actually plays, because I don't think they would have taken him if he was going to be like the 13th forward and not play. Do you know what I mean? So I think he's going to be put in an offensive role, maybe in the top 6. So like, I would love to see that for sure.
Yeah, I know that he's sick of the comparisons, but like, you have to look at what he's doing, and then like look at he's the only one since McDavid to put up those numbers in the U18s, and it's like, yeah, like, we're gonna do that. Everyone's gonna do that. So I do like his mentality towards it. It shows a lot of like character as well as like maturity, but it's gonna happen. So get used to it, kid. But exactly. Those two guys are obviously the ones everyone's excited about, with Wright and Bedard. And Wright, I watched a lot of the U18s last year. He was the second best player on the ice at all times. The first being Connor Bedard, the younger player. I actually thought he was better than Wright watching him the whole time, and he was just all over the place in a good way and like always on the puck. So exciting guy to watch. But what I will say here is just temper your expectations. Like, I'm just kind of sick of us putting a lot of pressure on the youngest players on the team when this is a 19-year-old's tournament. Like, it happens all the time. We talk about Byfield and Lafreniere and like all these other guys that just have so much pressure on them, and then it's an older player that always takes the show. If it's Barrett Hayton or Dylan Cousins, like for recent memory here. So I will temper expectations there and try to say, like, let's slow down with what we expect from the younger guys. But like you said, Harp, this is a sweet forward group, and there's a lot of guys who can put the puck in the net and like top down. So it's going to be exciting for sure. And I'm looking for the guys that have been around the block to really show up here. And I'm hoping for Cole Perfetti to put up a better tournament this year, and maybe Jake Neighbors as well. We got away from this pretty quick, but I do want to mention Hendrix Lapierre, because that one absolutely blew my mind. I'm not shocked about Brant Clark, but I'm blown away about Lapierre. Like,
me too.
A week ago, I was like, oh, he's going to the camp. Oh, he's a lock. Him, McTavish, and Jake Neighbors, all locks for this team. And then I saw today that he was cut, and I was like, what? Like, I watched him in preseason a lot because he played the Devils a few times, and I just had Washington on the screen quite a bit, and he was like one of the most noticeable players on the ice at all times again. And I was pretty shocked to see that he wasn't making this team. I guess, I don't know, maybe it's a position and size thing. He's not very big. He's playing center, and it's like, again, that's a role that has been overflown on this team, like skilled centers. So I guess maybe that's the case, but shocked about that one.
Me too, man. Like, I'm just shocked that, well, like, first of all, we never see this happen where a player has played NHL games and then doesn't make the team. Like, when is the last time we saw this happen? Like, in recent memory, I can't think of it.
You know what? All I can think of when I think about this situation is that bald Swiss coach who's like, they're bigger than us, they're faster than us, they're better than us, they shoot harder than us, they hit harder than us. And he's like, I can just see him in an interview now. They cut a guy who played in the NHL.
Yeah, no, seriously though. Like, and he played 7 games with the Caps this year, 6 games before they let him go. Like, clearly because they didn't want to burn the first year of his ELC and thought he'd be good in junior again. But it makes no sense to me. Like, the guy literally has an NHL goal. He had a fantastic preseason, as you mentioned, Case, and that was one of the big points going into the year. Like, that's why he made the team out of camp, because he had such a great season. And like, it's just shocking. It's truly shocking. I just don't understand the rationale.
There's teams that can't get players on their team that are drafted, and Canada's cutting guys that have played in the NHL and scored.
Yeah. And do you think if they lose this tournament, if they don't win gold, Lapierre can just say, well, there you go, you know?
I think if they do not succeed in this tournament, I'm going to get a little bit of a Michael Bunting situation going with Brant Clark and Lapierre, where I'm just sick of hearing their name because there's going to be so much talk about how they fudged this team by not taking those two guys. Yeah. So I really hope they win gold so I don't have to go through that.
Fair enough. If you go over to tsn.ca, there is, and you go to the Hockey Canada page, it's all about the the roster being announced, obviously, and some of the interviews, like the one with Connor Bedard about making the team, and then another, I think, from an executive, someone, a part of the management group, just kind of explaining why Connor Bedard wouldn't be denied and why Lapierre just wasn't a fit for this roster. So one point I wanted to bring up. So the tournament is split in Red Deer and Edmonton this year. Man, the Edmonton Oil Kings are like so stacked, and they've got 4 guys on this team to watch out for. Kosa, as we mentioned, Caden Gooley, who was just traded there in the WHL by the Prince Albert Raiders. And then we've got Jake Neighbors, who looked great early on with the St. Louis Blues, and Dylan Gunther, the first-round pick of the Arizona Coyotes. So just a cool little connector there, and I'll be watching out for those 4 guys because the tournament is in Red Deer and Edmonton.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping that maybe the question would be asked who we think the standout player is going to be, like take a stab before this tournament starts. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to pose the question myself.
Yeah, for Canada.
So for Canada. So last year's Cousins.
Yep.
This year, let's each give 3 players and see who's right. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's none of them. You can. I think. How would we do the draft again?
Okay. Let's do 1 each because we're going on time here.
I'm going 2 each.
Okay, let's go quick then.
Okay.
Case, since you brought it up, you'll go first. I'm better looking than Harp, so I'll go second, and then Harp goes third. How's that sound?
That sounds great to me. I'm taking Mason McTavish.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one. The kid's got an NHL goal, right? Like he played a bit with Anaheim to start the season. He looks like an absolute Sasquatch when you look at him. Sasquatch with a TikTok haircut. But yeah,
dude,
I'm sure
he has 2 goals and assists in 9 games in the NHL. He's got 3 games in the AHL, goal and assist, and he's played 4 in the OHL since being sent down. Has 5 goals.
Yeah. There you go. Number 2, I'll take Cole Perfetti. I mean, this guy also has NHL experience. He was a high pick last year, one of the most skilled players in that draft. And, Winnipeg's happy to have him. I think he'll have a fantastic tournament as one of the older guys. Not necessarily oldest, but, he's not 16 Connor Bedard. So Cole Perfetti, that's my pick.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to surprise you guys with this one. Owen Power, for me, number 1 overall pick of the Buffalo Sabres, just ripping it up at Michigan. And he's going to be expected to be a horse. The big 6'6" defenseman. He's going to be on the ice a lot. So I'm looking at Owen Power for Team Canada.
Okay. Who's your next one?
I'm going to have to go with his teammate, Kent Johnson, and just the skill and the way he plays down low and the hands in front of the net. I think this guy is going to be able to score a bunch of goals in this tournament. And a shout out to Cory once again, because he's a Columbus Blue Jackets first-round pick. And I'm looking at Kent Johnson. I think the skill is off the charts, and I think his name kind of gets lost a little bit in the forward group when you're talking about Bedard, Wright, McTavish, Perfetti, Neighbors, all these guys that we've mentioned. And so I'm going with Kent Johnson.
I'll go with Sebastian Cossa. Don't know if he gets the first start of the tournament like we mentioned, but if he does, I think, he seems like a big-time player, and if he can roll with it, that'd be great. There's a reason that he crept up in the draft last year to actually be picked ahead of Jesper Wallstedt, who at one point was projected top 5. I'm going to pick Cossa and hope that, he gets a start or two and is just able to run with it like we mentioned.
All right. I got exactly how I wanted this to play out. I knew I wasn't going to get Perfetti and McTavish, so I'm happy with my second, who was my second, and I'm going to take Dylan Guenther because I want the two best goal scorers on this team as my go-tos.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, all of the players we mentioned, I think, should be big impact players. I mean, with the exception of maybe Casa, if he isn't the starter, if he isn't able to get a few starts and run with it, but I guess we never know, but those 6 seem like they're going to have a good shot compared to a younger guy like, say, Connor Bedard, who is 16 years old. I don't know if we mentioned that, only about 18 times. But it's just, you can't expect too much from him. I was gonna pick him and say, maybe he'll have an exceptional tournament and he'll live up to the hype, but I think it's impossible to live up to the hype when you're being compared to the best player on the planet. So...
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a lot to put on a kid that young, but hey, there are other great forwards on this team, and we certainly made an effort to talk about them. Case, I like the pick of Dylan Guenther. That guy is a goal scorer, and wouldn't it be something if he is a big impact player for this team in sort of the same way that Barrett Hayton was? That would be great for the Arizona Coyotes. They could use some positivity right now. So there we go. Guys, any last thoughts on Team Canada's roster heading into the World Juniors that start Boxing Day?
Go ahead.
I pretty much just going to say what every Canadian's thinking, and what we say every year. It's gold or I'm going to riot and never like one of these players again.
Yeah, totally. And send them death threats on social media. And that's what
wasn't going there.
That's what happens. It is so sad. If the team loses this year and we see that again, that, there's just no excuse for that. I can't believe that shit happens every year. It's not even... Anyway, every year. My final thought on Team Canada, it's on the men's team and not the World Junior team. It's a question, actually, not a thought to you guys quickly as we wrap up. Who should I get on a jersey? I'm going to get the white jersey for the Olympics as long as NHL players go. Who should I get on it? Because I haven't decided.
Oh, man. I don't know.
So many good choices.
Yeah. It's put all of them on a dartboard and throw.
Yeah, it's like, do I get Michael Bunting or Zach Hyman? Which way? Anyway,
I don't know. That's something for you to think about. Just get the whiteboard out, put the whole roster on there, 4 lines, your 3 pairs of D and your goaltenders, and make your decision from there.
Yeah, throw a dart, like Case said.
Yeah, exactly. One quick note before we wrap up. Obviously, last week's episode, we talked about the changes in Philadelphia and Vancouver, and thank you for listening to that, by the way. The Vancouver Canucks are 4-0 under Bruce Boudreau. 4 straight wins for them, and I've actually watched a couple of his post-game media conferences, and the guy is hilarious. He is a great soundbite guy and is just a breath of fresh air. So way to go for Bruce and the Vancouver Canucks, who, by the way, just hired Jim Rutherford as well as the president of hockey ops, and the GM search is underway. So, hey, way to go, Canucks.
Yeah, Pettersson comes down with an absolute vintage Pettersson, even though he's 12 years old and has a beauty schnipe. And then they start chanting for Bruce. It's
Bruce, okay. There it is.
Yeah, Bruce, there it is. This team's back. Pettersson remembers how to score now because Bruce gave him that bottle of water that was from Michael Jordan's bag or whatever. So they're back and they're ready to go.
Yeah. Love to see it.
Excellent. And congratulations to Ben Bishop on a heck of a career as well. And we posted about that on our Instagram. You can check that out at Boys in the Booth. World Junior starts Boxing Day. It's Canada and the Czech Republic, 7 o'clock puck drop on TSN. And we look forward to the World Juniors every year. So thanks so much for listening to episode 109. Casey, have a great trip in Sweden. And we will talk to you again next week.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details, and don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at www.patreon.com/boysinthebooth.